A new Superman comic was just announced last week. It won't release until November 9th, but people's preconceptions are already a great source of entertainment.
The heteros are upsetero. Welcome aboard, ladies and gents, and everyone else who represents, to more pointless commentary. Today I'm going to be talking about the so-called pink-washing of fictional characters. It isn't always badly done, but when it is, Jesus Christ save our souls. Please do not exit the video until we've come to a complete stop. There's a lot of talk running through the interwebs about the new Superman comic series coming out. And coming out is precisely the phrase for it. Just over a week ago, DC announced the release of a new Superman comic book series, and teased the most talked about photo from the end of issue number 5, Superman the Son of Kal-El, where John Kent, wearing his Superman garb, is seen sharing a kiss with his friend Jay Nakamura, who is, you guessed it, a reporter. Types must run in the family. I had a hard time finding actual announcement information about this comic book series, since the only thing anyone seems to be covering is John Kent's orientation. Now, there's a lot that needs clearing up about this upcoming comic series, because a lot of people are seeing the coming out announcement and not paying attention to any of the details. Arizona Governor Wendy Rogers, for example, instead of carrying out her gubernatorial duties, she's spending taxpayer-funded time in her office posting inflammatory tweets condemning the announcement. Superman loves Lois Lane, period. I'm pretty sure she meant to say Lois Lane, but she was probably panic typing this on her phone. Good old autocorrect, making points invalid since 2007. Hollywood is trying to make Superman gay, and he's not. Just rename the new version Superman so we can all know the difference and avoid seeing it. I'm just as confused as you are. I don't get the Superman reference, and I don't think anyone else will either. Unless she's trying to apply an on-the-fly rename so that there's an obvious difference so people know what to watch out for. But I have been able to dissect the rest of her tweet and address what's wrong with it. First is a common mistake that people in the media have been making, which is they think this is Clark Kent's Superman. This is his son, Jonathan. John, for short. Another misconception I'm seeing a lot from both media and consumers is the belief that this is going to be a TV show, hence the Hollywood reference. This is a comic book series. You actually have to go to a comic book shop or order online to read/see it. Also, what is with that profile pic? Your kind can't meme, sweetheart. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. He's also not gay. He's bisexual. You know, a lot like your senator. Yes, Kyrsten Sinema is vibrantly bisexual. Yeah, take that, haters. Seriously, take her, we don't want her. But the outrage doesn't stop with the media. Dean Cain, who played Superman in the series Lois and Clark, spoke out about the new Superman comics in an interview with Fox and Friends. So you know he's going to be as unbiased as possible. They say it's a bold new direction. I say they're bandwagoning. And on this part I'd have to agree. Inclusive moves like this tend to entice more viewers, or in this case more readers, when there's more representation, particularly with people who are as marginalized in the LGBT community as bisexual people. I'm not saying we're discriminated against by our own peers or anything like that, but I have come to notice amongst other bisexual people that they face a difference in understanding in terms of representation in the LGBT. Back on the topic of bandwagoning, sometimes it's necessary for companies or businesses to appeal to the crowd. Just because someone boards the bandwagon doesn't necessarily mean they're abusing their writing privileges. Sometimes they do. Other times they use it as designed. My YouTube channel, for example, if I don't jump on the bandwagon, I don't get the views I need, and my numbers go down. People don't come here to watch me play Minecraft or Deltarune or even talk about spooky stuff. You guys come to hear me blather on about dumb bullshit that pisses people off. Kane goes further on to say that this move isn't bold or brave or some crazy new direction. While I have to agree that this isn't a new direction because it's already been done several times before, I have to disagree with the inference that it's neither bold nor brave. From what I've seen, the bold and brash tend to be either taboo and or scrutinized against, but they continue to do it anyway despite the backlash. Dean here is claiming that John coming out as bisexual is neither bold nor brave, yet his criticizing the move is disproving his own point. But here's the twist. The writers didn't say anything about this being a bold, brave, or crazy new direction. Not that I could find, anyway. Here's what the writers actually said about the series. As we have seen John grow up in front of our eyes, it'll be interesting to see him not only trying to find himself as a person, but a global superhero in the complex atmosphere of modern life. On the other hand, I hope this kind of thing will not be seen as a big deal in the future. You could visualize how it could pan out in the future when the most powerful man in the world is part of the LGBT community. The writer who gave this interview described it as being a big deal. Now, you can say it's not a big deal all you like, but if you make a big deal out of it, well, you'd just be stepping on your own toes at this point. There's further evidence that Dean Cain has put words in other people's mouths further in the interview.
They're talking about him fighting, real-world problems like climate change, the deportation of refugees, and he'll be dating a hacktivist, whatever a hacktivist is. I don't know.
Well, if you don't know, why are you saying it? All these details that he gave about this comic hasn't been publicly disclosed. So either the comic book creators gave him exclusive insight as to what the comics are going to be about, or he's lying to push his own narrative. Based on Kane's history, I'm leaning towards the latter. The only proper information about this comic series I've been able to procure has been very vague, in terms that they will be addressing modern global issues, but they weren't specific on which ones. Kane also described Nakamura as a hacktivist, which is a word that has never been mentioned by the writers or anyone else but Kane himself. In the comic book interviews, they described him as a reporter and implied him as a confidant for John. Aw, they both have three-letter names. How romantic. Kane's appearance on Fakes News is not unique. He goes on regularly to complain about the nuances of modern life, such as wokeness in the media, and his sheer contempt for globalism.
But brave would be having him, fighting for the rights of gay people in Iran, or they'll throw you off a building for the offense of being gay. Why don't they have him fight the injustices that created the refugees whose deportation he's protesting? That would be brave. I'd read that. Or fighting for the rights of women to attend school and have the ability to work and live, and boys not to be raped by men under the new warm and fuzzy Taliban.
Yeah, that's globalism. So, are you against it, or do you agree with it? You can't have it both ways, mate. But thankfully, I'm done talking about the Superman child for right now. Let's move on to the public's reaction. Reactions amongst us peasant folk has been pretty much just as mixed as the media. Some people are excited for the representation. A sizable amount have huge problems with it. But the majority of us don't really care. I personally think it's a nice gesture, but to be honest, Superman isn't even one of my favorite heroes. When I was young, I always picked him when I was asked which one I liked more between him and Batman, but my childhood hero was always Zatanna. I always had a thing for magic, and Zatanna's powers just hit me in all the right ways. But regardless of my personal feelings, the public outcry about this has pretty much gotten my attention, and many others too. The people who are fine with this kind of development don't really have all that much to say about it besides, cool, can't wait to read it. But the people who take issue with this announcement have been screaming the loudest. Now, there's really no doubt a lot of people will look for literally any excuse to get their huff on and complain about anything, regardless if they get any of the details right or not. Which does have a silver lining, because then I get to sit here and talk about them being such fragile little snowflakes and collect the clicks off their ignorance. With these arguments comes a lot of misinformation and mistrust, but there's also a good deal of legitimate concerns to be addressed. I'll be picking out the ones I've come across the most to give you my takes on how I see them. Now, we've all seen the complaints from people in the media and people who are funded by the media, such as Wendy Rogers, Dean Cain, and Ben Shapiro. But what about amongst the fans? People like us who enjoy comics and superhero shows. One of the arguments was brought up by a YouTuber named Tyrone Magnus, who raised a point that resonated with me in terms of creativity with superheroes. Magnus's video basically talks about creating new superheroes and making them LGBT and not the heroes we've known and loved since we were growing up. Which is a perspective I completely agree with. My argument on this is, to my knowledge, John Kent is a new superhero, a blank slate. He was introduced in July of 2015, the perfect time to come out with an orientation other than straight. I don't even think I've seen this kind of backlash when Miles Morales was introduced in Marvel as a new Spider-Man. And I know I haven't heard a single complaint from people like Tyrone Magnus griping about Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. Other YouTubers I've seen talking about this have mostly either been outraged by this development, or they're making videos claiming they don't care and that their comics are far superior. And they're just complaining about their quote-unquote competition to compare notes, at the same time utilizing the appeal of vice signaling to appear edgy to their target audience. Vice signaling is the performative act of publicly hating something you really don't have any vested interest in whatsoever, in the hopes that it hurts the people who support it, for the sole purpose of appealing to an audience that hates that particular group of people, mostly political theater. Which compels me to ask, are the straights okay? Another argument is, this is all just pandering to the LGBT audience. And on this, I'd have to agree. With such a sizable amount of the population being either LGBT or allies, companies will find ways to pander to the audience. I mean, the writers did claim that fans have called out on DC to give them more LGBTQ representation. And there's no doubt people making such demands exist, but what's the actual ratio? People are going to hate me for this part, but I'm here to preach the truth. You guys ready for it? Pandering is nothing new in the world of comic book heroes. There, I said it. Captain America was American propaganda designed to celebrate American exceptionalism. Hell, he was punching Nazis since before America even remotely cared about World War II. Hipster Cap was doing it before it was cool. Wonder Woman was a pander to the female audience, and to give men something to ogle. Robin the Boy Wonder was a pander for the younger audience who wanted to relate to the action. And don't get me started on Black Panther. And then we have Sam Wilson donning the mantle of Captain America. All of these heroes prove my point, which is, pandering doesn't always equal bad writing. There's also the problem of tease pandering, or what's commonly known as queerbaiting. The acts of writers and producers dangling carrots before our eyes, giving us not so subtle hints that characters might be queer, but don't actually deliver on it. Which might have been part of the motivation behind giving us this issue 5 teaser to begin with. It's their way of saying, look friends, we're not queerbaiting you this time. I do find this humorous, but at the same time, DC being upfront like this is refreshing considering Marvel's track record. There's nothing wrong with sprinkling a little pander here and there. Just make sure the heroes don't lose sight of what they were designed for. I want my heroes to focus on being heroes, not trying to decide what gender they are or what they do in the bedroom. This is a common gripe among conservatives, where they fear the focus is going to be on their orientation or identity rather than seeing any action or real-life lessons. Now, truth be told, there is a slight warrant for this concern. There are a handful of people in the LGBT community who focus on their identity and make it a focal point of their entire personality, which does tend to get annoying. But there's only a small splinter group compared to the whole. Most of us, you don't even know whether we're queer or not until we either reveal it when the conversation comes up, or we bring our significant other to meet them. And I'm certainly not saying the media hasn't gone overboard with this kind of representation. There's plenty of examples out there that even those of us in the community find insulting.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
And here's the most common gripe that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. What if my children see this? Here's a post I saw on my Facebook feed that I could not leave out of this video. To each its own. But I want to know, why are they forcing this on my sons and daughter? There should be a question mark there. I want them to see Superman as a hero. Not worried about that. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say what. Not worried about what's going in and coming out of his backside. A bunch of crying emojis, because of course there are. This is one of the misconceptions I discussed earlier. A lot of people, particularly in the conservative community, have this notion that anyone who's trans is either confused or only focused on what they identify as. Or with homosexual people, they only care about sex and can think of nothing else. This is due to the spread of propaganda by control freaks who will lie about different kinds of people to maintain the status quo. And this poor woman has become a victim of that kind of manipulative control. And we also find that she's spreading said control over her own children. Who want their kids to think about their sexuality under the age of 15 is beyond me. I don't want my kids watching this and getting curious and playing with theirs or somebody else's private areas because they see it on TV.
Ma'am, this is a Wendy's.
There's so much wrong with this half of the post, I don't even know where to start. First off, can anybody name one children's TV show that shows explicit sexual activity? I certainly can't. And don't say South Park, Family Guy, Futurama, or Big Mouth. You know damn well those aren't kids' shows. The last bit is the most popular display of mental gymnastics it should be in the Olympics. It's the same old dog whistle of, "Oh my god, the media is sexualizing our kids!" No, love, you're doing that yourself by bringing it up. Children having feelings? Oh no, now they're gonna start playing with their genitals. Honestly, if this is the conclusion you come to when you think of LGBT children, you're the one with the problem, mate. Look, I'm no expert about this kind of thing, but please consult your pediatrician about this subject because restricting your children from exploring themselves will stunt their development. That's all I'm gonna say about that. The problem here is that she's equating children developing feelings or a special attachment to one of their peers is wanting to... But nothing can be further from the truth. First off, hormonal activity doesn't start until puberty hits, and sometimes much later. Before puberty, kids who have a crush on each other will simply just spend more time together and do other affectionate things like share a lunch, have sleepovers, schedule playdates, play video games together, go to the cinema, all the regular hangout stuff. Just the two of them. The worst thing you'll probably catch them doing is having a playground wedding. And if the kids are LGBT, that's when the real trouble starts. I'm joking, they'll pretty much just be doing the exact same things I described, just with the same gender. The thing is, most kids will develop feelings or crushes with others in their age group at whatever time they want to. I had my first crush when I was 7, and I didn't even initiate the relationship. She did. She being the classmate I was affectionate with at the time. It's normal for kids to experience crushes, and it's detrimental to their development to punish them for it. The poster did take a photo of her TV when this was shown on the news. She openly said that she watches Fox, so you know she's a nutter. But this proves she doesn't pay attention to anything, because it says comic series right there. It's obviously not a TV show, so she shouldn't be complaining. Now I can prove that the OP is definitely not a bigot because she did clarify in her own comments that she teaches her kids to shield their eyes when they even see heterosexual activity or public displays of affection, like kissing or light flirting. Which is why whenever Superman had interactions with Lois Lane, she wouldn't even let her kids watch that either. Which brings up the question, why did you even make this pointless post to begin with, you prudish moo? Anyway, the point here is, this lady isn't a bigot. She's just a prude, and a parent who doesn't fully understand what she's doing. Other common comments I see agreeing with her are things like, doesn't bother me or change anything with who you want to be with. But why do they do this with cartoons? It's strange. They are too young. Comments like this basically mean, I acknowledge you have a right to exist, but you still shouldn't. This is why representation is important in kids' shows, because LGBT children exist. It's not a decision made exclusively in adult life. It's a natural phenomenon that affects human beings of all ages. And exposure to people like them will make them feel less guilty for being who they are. For people who see that as a problem, I don't have good news for you, 'cause you're not the good guy in this situation. This mentality, along with a lot of the replies, brings me to our next gripe. A lot of people are pushing the narrative of, "They're forcing their agenda on us." I've asked these people constantly what they mean by this, and their responses vary, but the most common is usually a variation of, "They're trying to force all of us to become gay." As if showing LGBT people in the media more often is going to somehow convert impressionable people into being LGBT against their will. Now, I'm not one to sugarcoat everything. The sad truth is, yes, there are going to be people, mostly children, out there who will try to be like the characters they see in the media that they consume. It's been happening for ages. That's why some kids from my generation hurt themselves falling off high places trying to fly like Superman, or trying to parkour like the badass people in the animes. If you ask me, pretending to be gay or bi is honestly the safest behavior to emulate. I don't condone it. It's not good to pretend to like people you don't, or pretend to be a minority. But at the very least, it's safe. But if your child does try to emulate LGBT feelings that they don't own, the best thing you can do is to ask them critical thinking questions to be sure that's who they think they are, and still support their decision. And if one day they decide, "Nah, I was just pretending, I like the opposite gender," then explain to them calmly why they shouldn't pretend like that. If they're young. If they're doing that as adults, that's just not good. To conclude this really long rant, the new Superman is bi now. Get over it. And before you judge the comic series, how about you wait until it comes out and actually read it for yourselves? Everybody has their own predictions on what it's going to be like, and that's fine. I honestly think it's going to be a similar scenario to Batman Beyond. But too many people are already talking crap about the comic as if they've read it themselves, which I know they haven't because it ain't even come out yet. And this is usually the time I get cut off, but I guess now that